We are live. JT here. Welcome to The Huddle. The Huddle is where I sit down and have conversations with successful people from the world of sport and coaching. It's so that we can learn more about their journey to greatness. Why do I have these conversations? Because success always leaves clues. I just want to take a moment, whether you are watching live, whether you're watching the replay, whether you're listening to the audio on the podcast, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for joining me and my special guest today. You're going to grab, I know, a ton from this conversation today, and I'm really enthused to share this conversation with my special guests, with you and the community. My guest in the huddle today is a 8-year CFL vet. He is now the current special teams coordinator at the University of Guelph Gryphons football program. My guest in the huddle today is Coach Donnavan Carter. How are you today, Coach?
Oh, I'm fantastic, JT. I'm very humbled and honored to join you on the show today.
You know what, Coach, it's my pleasure. What I want to do, Coach, is really just take a moment just to send you some gratitude. The one thing that I have really come to love about our time as we've got to know each other is just the energy you bring. Like there's this very, I just want to help. I want to help serve. And I really enjoy that. And it's a great reminder to me that coaching and mentorship is really about putting people first and helping them develop. So thank you for that reminder, Coach.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I feel like I get a lot from, what I do here at the University of Guelph and from my career as a player. And there's so much to gain from young people and, helping and mentoring. That's kind of why I do what I do.
Okay. So, Coach, we always like to start off the huddle, light and easy. One thing I often share is, hey, life is a game and games are supposed to be fun. So what I'm curious to know is, what is one interesting fact or maybe a quirk that you would feel comfortable sharing with our audience that maybe a lot of people don't know about you?
Well, I think there's a new thing for me that I'm just starting to kind of discover, is my great appreciation for the outdoors. I had a time of becoming a professional athlete. I was inside, I was indoors, I was in the track training, or, and then we played in the summer season. So I just felt like I didn't have a great opportunity to get all the appreciation for nature and beauty. So now I'm walking a ton and riding my bike. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't really know. Yeah, that would be one.
Okay. No, I love the simplicity. I also love that you talked about using the word discover. Now I'm curious, when was this something? Is this something you've discovered? Like, is it been something pretty recent?
It has. I think the onset of this pandemic, and and that was the challenge for me initially, to not have the kind of options we're all used to having. And then, just making sure I was going to maintain shape. And, I think post my career, that's been a new challenge because you just had so many other immediate issues. You had your family and you're trying to keep up with the Joneses and on all those things. So I think sometimes your personal health and your conditioning and those things sometimes can take a back seat unless you have it fully integrated into who you are and what you do. So I think it was an opportunity to kind of reflect at the beginning of this thing that we've all gone through over the last year and a half, and that was one of the positive things that's come out of it for me.
Again, I love what I love what you're talking about. I love the verbiage you're using about opportunity, growth, and again, such valuable, simple reminders. So, Coach, I'm curious. You have been involved with sport for many years, right? You've first played at a very high level, and you've also coached at very high level. I'm curious, what role has sport played in your life? And what would you say is the biggest takeaway you've really had from sport?
I can't speak enough. I think sport is completely intertwined into who I am and who I've become. I've learned such valuable lessons. Sport and competition has seen me grow. I've seen myself grow as I've, taken on new challenges and set new goals. There's so many valuable lessons within sport. I think there's so many parallels that can be drawn. And right now, as a coach, I really, it's leadership. We're teaching leadership and teamwork. And that's the base fundamental structure of who I am and who I've become. I think you got to be able to work with others and do things for all the right reasons and not just for yourself. I think that's what allowed me to reach another level is when I actually was on a really good team and we found a way to be selfless and not be individuals. Even, you want to showcase your talents, but to find a way to do it together these are all the things that I embody now, but through sport is really what's carved and shaped me.
I love everything you shared there, Coach. A couple of things really jumped out as you shared there was the inherent life lessons that come from sport and how they can be applied to the game of life. But what I really love how you talked about is it's part of who you are, that you embody those, that's just part of your being. And that's something, Coach, that I've really observed about you is that you really do preach what you practice, right? Like those taking on challenges, challenging yourself to grow every day. So I'm curious, how is that something you knew initially, or is that something that you've learned over time?
That's such a good question, JT. I had no idea. I really had no idea coming up. I was, you're as a youngster, your focus is so narrow. You're taking things on as they come and what's in front of you. You're learning and you're creating your value. Well, those values that were instilled by in your home, by your parents, you're creating that system that you needs to show every day. I think that was the beginning, but I didn't realize these things. I didn't realize a lot. I was able to kind of back solve and fill in once I got to a certain level, once I, became a pro, once I when I started coaching, you start to go back and start to build and see purpose for all the steps that you've taken along the way. And sport and to see all the parallels that, all this hard work that I put in, the naysayers and doubters that I had to kind of challenge and prove wrong. That's just like life. That's just like a job interview. That's like, it's the same thing, it's like a relationship. Passion is a big thing for me. I think you need to have it in your relationships, whether it's your friend or your partner for life. You need to be passionate about your career and what you do. So and I think that's the essence, and that's where it all began. Finding my passions. I think I initially found it through sport, but then I was able to apply it to other areas of my life.
I love the words that you're using, right? I love the idea of passion. It's such a high energy word, right? Like when you say that to me, I feel my energy, my vibration going up. So I'm again, you've worked and played with so many high level athletes. Is passion something that you can teach? Like, is passion, does everyone have passion, or is it just some are blessed with passion and some aren't, from your experience?
My experience, I would think everyone has passion. There's got to be something you care about, that will drive itself. You actually don't need motivation to do the necessary things to accomplish what you're looking for. So the key is, can your passion be something constructive, or is it always going to just be something recreational? So, and that's kind of that nugget where I was able to apply it to kind of closing the gap, and being a Canadian who went to the US on a scholarship and thought I was pretty confident when I went over there, but kind of ran into a few guys who were really confident, really, really confident, and learning how to close that gap and say, hey, I can do what you can do as well. There's no difference between us. So I truly believe everyone has passion. It's kind of learning how to put it into the right things, the things that are most important to us, i.e. relationships, family, and then ultimately your career.
So what I'm hearing from you, it's really important to have clarity, to be clear on what you want to be great at in life, whether it's relationships, whether it's health, whether it's football, whether it's career, right? It's really important that you have clarity and you prioritize those things.
Yes, absolutely. I think early on, I think we all have those dreams early on. I think, okay, I love Michael Jackson. I loved Sugar Ray Leonard. Okay, but then then there was Deion Sanders. Okay, and I want to be a professional athlete. Guess what? I was really short and really thin. Fortunately, I hit a growth spurt in grade 10, and I found the weight room late high school. But again, I think being able to know the things that really, really touched me, and I could find the things I can aspire to, allowed me to start to learn how to set goals and to start to set out towards that. It was a long journey. But how do you know where to go if you have no idea what direction to start off in?
Again, Coach, so many great points. But what really jumped out to me was when you said, like, is it touching you, right? And I often talk about, like, one thing I always say to myself to remind me often is, like, serve their heart. And what I mean by that, and what I always share with people, is I'm not talking about that physical heart. I'm talking about that emotional heart that's deep in the subconscious mind, right? That has your deepest wants, your deepest desires. And like you said, it links back to that when you are clear on what those things are and you mirror them with intentional and focused action, that's where that passion of life comes from.
There it is, right on the head. That's where that's going to allow you the power and the juice to overcome. Okay, because we still can't control all the things that are going to happen to us in our journey. What we can control is we can decide not to have it take us down. We can decide not to have the adversity that we go through stop us. Okay, so though that was big, you have to find that, never die. And it comes from passion. It comes from knowing where you're going. So those are things that I think helped me along the way.
Well, it's interesting, right? And again, life always comes full circle. Before we jumped on, we talked, the title of this conversation is adversity. So again, from your experience, either from your own or working and playing with other high level athletes, what is why is it important to understand, what you're passionate about? Because adversity, challenges, obstacles will pop up from time to time. It's not that we want to expect them, but it happens in the game of life. Why is it so important that we understand what we're passionate about?
We need to know, it is so important, JT, because we need to know because there's times I had to reset. I had to set new goals. I had goals and I would achieve some and not achieve some, or something would derail where I was going. And then I had to kind of reestablish new goals, a new focus. Okay, you have to revisit these things because things change as we go along this journey. So those were things that were important. Knowing where you're going allows you to recalibrate yourself and continue on that journey to where you need to get to.
I love that. And again, I love that you talk about journey. The one thing that jumped out to me is whenever I've heard you speak, whenever we've had these conversations, the one thing I really felt from you is football is like a vehicle. It's a vehicle for you to teach important life skills. And I really get a sense that you see it's preparing young people to win at the game of life. Now, was that something that you always understood as a coach, or is that something that's sort of grown and evolved over time?
I would say a little bit more the latter, JT. Okay. That's definitely grown over time. It's grown after being influenced by certain mentors I've come across along the way that taught me a different way, different perspective. If you look back to how kind of narrow-minded I might have been in earlier years, and to go to a different place, to see a different culture, and then to see how I can implement that into myself to make myself better. Those are lessons I had to learn. Oh, how do I continue your success? One of the things as an athlete, we have guys that are coming from high school, they were the best player on their team. Okay, but now they're in a situation where everybody was the best player on your team. How do you rise to the top in that situation? Okay, as the competition gets better, the Olympics are going on right now. You might have been top dog in Canada. Can you go and be top dog amongst your peers in the world? That's huge, and that's why the Olympics are special, and it happens every 4 years. But it's the same thing for an athlete as they progress down that line and that climb to the top. It's just like even high school, going from junior high to high school. The same thing. Academically, can you raise your game? Can you raise your game as an athlete? Can you raise your game as a leader? So as you go through the different stages of life.
Mm-hmm. And I love how you talked about, that idea of raise your game. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I've learned, during my time coaching is that, we're sort of conditioned and programmed to believe that certain people are just, they're lucky, they're fortunate. And, obviously everyone has their own unique set of gifts, talents, and abilities. But I'm curious, from your experience, what is that one factor that you would say really helps people raise their game? Like, is it something external? Is it something internal? Like,
I would tend to, it has to be something, it has to be I think it's internal, JT. It's that fire that kind of burns within you. That one that, well, in my instance, it allowed when someone said, hey, you're too small to play linebacker. And I was really big on not letting other people define my limits. and what I was capable of doing. And it happened numerous times, whether it was a teacher who challenged me and said, is this the best you could do? Or, whether it was a coach who said, oh, you can't play this particular position on the field. As a pro, I ended up playing 4 different positions on 4 different teams, and I was a leader on each one. But that motivation was set in a long time ago when you come across a naysayer. Yeah. So I think you need a little bit of that external motivation, but more important than that, you have to have that fire that's burning inside that says, I'm in control of my own destiny.
No, and I again, one thing I love about what you talked about is it is that high performers do have a bit of that edge, right? Where they do, there's that bit of, okay, I'll prove you wrong. Mm-hmm. But then, like you said, I love how you brought it back to, no, it's this internal juice, it's this internal drive, it's that fire in your belly that, that ambition, then drive that just anyone can have. So I'm curious, is there a moment where you really notice that fire gets lit for an athlete, to where, all of a sudden they're all in, like they get it, they're in pursuit of their goals, they're leaving nothing behind?
I think I felt it as a youngster growing up. I think it really started with my parents. It really did. The values they instilled. And, I was pretty fortunate to have 2 hardworking parents that, they weren't born in this country. They were born in Jamaica. So that pride they instilled, that they could come to another country and do whatever it takes to allow, their children, myself and my brother, to have success. So that's key. I think along the way, as you set goals, you have to reward yourself when you start to achieve them. Okay. And then reset new goals. But that was what allowed me to continue to drive and gain strength, having small successes along the way, correcting things that didn't go the right way, correcting and learning from, and having that attitude that I'm going to be better today than I was yesterday. Continue, have that mindset, always be growing up. I was learning at 32 in my, 7th year of playing football. I was still learning how to be better. It's a young man's game. How do you hold off the younger generations? Well, I felt like if I got better every day, there's no way I was going to be caught.
Mm-hmm. And I think you bring up a real important point here is, it's so easy to, and this is something we learn, is to judge ourselves, right? In terms of like good or bad. And that can keep us stuck, right? That learned behavior of judging that we've all picked up, as we've played the game of life, that we learn from a young age. But I really love how you talked about being objective with yourself. And I always think back to that Nelson Mandela quote: I never lose. I either win or I learn. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious from you, that ability to be objective with yourself, is that something that, a lot of people maybe don't truly understand or never become aware of how powerful that is? But I'm curious from you, you've worked with a lot of high performers. How important is it to learn to be more objective with ourselves?
Critical. I also lend it to kind of that positive mindset, and I've met people who aren't that way, and when you see that glass in it, I think it's half full, period. It's half full. I would never look at it as being the other way around. And there's some people who see that glass and they think it's the opposite. It's halfway empty, so having a positive mindset, self-belief in yourself, and then, I think every time you're able to do that, it builds that snowball. When again, someone said, I can't play linebacker, and then I'm able to do that, it built the snowball for me. It built it. It built, okay, you can't, what else can't I do? What is the next thing I can kind of prove and kind of have that chip on your shoulder? You see it when in the draft, for example, and a player, an individual thinks they're a first round talent, and perhaps they don't go in the first round. Okay, their whole career may be motivated off of something like that. They come in and they want to prove to every team they were mistaken. Like a guy like Tom Brady, picked in the 6th round. Okay, every day he's still motivated by that. That one day where every GM got it wrong. They got it wrong in the National Football League, and they let a generational talent slip all the way to 6th round, and he makes them pay every day for that.
It's amazing how that harnessed edge, right, has created one of the most decorated athletes of all time, right? Just that being picked, I think it was 199, has fueled him for his career.
Unlimited gas, like solar energy. It really is. It has completely fueled him. I'm sure other things have, and he's an awesome individual who's done great things and will continue to. So.
And as you were sharing, it sort of brought up this idea, I think back to, before we jumped on, we were talking, we both had the pleasure of coaching Nick Hallett. And that was one of the conversations when I had Nick in the huddle. He kind of said the same thing. At first, his motivation was to prove people wrong. But then again, I see mirrors, like when you're sharing, I'm like, oh, I start to understand Nick's mentality, where he's like, no, then I came to a point to where I realized I can play. And he started to play for himself. So again, it speaks volumes about your coaching and mentorship, which is definitely something that I have no doubt that he picked up working alongside you.
Well, I've been fortunate over the years to work with a lot of, I feel, amazing and like young adults with, I wish I could be able to kind of see where everybody is, but I have been contacted by various guys over the years who have thanked me, for, pushing or believing in them, pushing them, challenging them. So guys like Nick Hallett, who I knew he was a talented young man, and being able to teach talented guys, I think there's a feel for that. It's not easy. You got to be yourself, but and they're very young, and I allow them to help guide me, make them better. Because for me to find a trigger on any individual, I need to know as much as I can about them, so I can find the best ways to, plant those seeds or little bits of information so he can be receptive to them, and then thus become a better player, hopefully, with his own passion and drive. And if I can give him a little bit of insight and knowledge of stuff I've picked up along the way to help him, then we're off and running.
Coach, I love that. I love how you're talking about just your, just that what you shared there just speaks volumes about who you are as a coach, as a mentor, as a leader, is that you observe and you ask, people that you're coaching, like, how can I best serve you? Like really understanding, what makes them tick, how they learn best, what their goals are, what their motivations are. And your job is to just help show them how to get there. So again, it speaks volumes about just your level of confidence that you're, like you said, who you are, that you can sort of adapt and innovate to their learning style.
Yeah, JT. I think it's important not to be insecure. Okay, be good at what you do. You have to be an expert, because I really felt as I went through, I wanted to learn from someone who was more knowledgeable than me. So, and as an athlete going through it, if I ever felt like, whoa, I might know more than my teacher, like that didn't kind of bode well for that relationship. So I always, and maybe I don't have all the answers. So, but can I get the answer is the key. So when I'm dealing with athletes, I think, yeah, you can do it. I just feel there's more than one way to get the job done. Okay. And there's more efficient ways and more effective ways to get the job done. So I don't want to, I'm not so insecure that I'm not willing to field questions and learn more about who I'm coaching. So, you know, some people say, oh, you're being a little too nice. You're being a little bit of a player's coach. You know what? I'm just gaining more information so I can really reach this young man. You know, so that's the way I look at it. And sometimes I need to be in a little conversation. I need a little bit of an exchange instead of, you know, the contrary, some of my older mentors and where you're coming from that real old school and it's more of a one-way street with respect to coaching and developing people. I have learned, especially like the more I know, I can actually coach that guy better.
And I think what you just shared there is just highlight what every high performer, what every great leader is they are open-minded, they're coachable, right? They're so open to learning new things because like you talked about, it's when you're open to learning new things, you become more efficient, you become more effective, you become more productive, and you can actually serve at a higher level. So I love that, Coach.
Yeah, it's confidence is my big guy. You know, I think that's what I got to a level where I was when I graduated university. I got my bachelor's degree. You know, I had some awards on the football team there. I became the last Canadian on the team. It was such a fulfilling time. I was entering both drafts, the NFL and the CFL draft. But I also felt like I could go into any company or corporation and just, you know, really shine in an interview process. So I just was so confident, you know, and I attribute that to my student athlete experience you know, I went to Northern Illinois, a team in the MAC, and I think competing with my teammates there and the coaching I got is in altogether that's kind of what did it for me. And it's kind of, I want to pass that on. That's one of the big reasons why I coach. My coach at the time, he asked me if I wanted to go into coaching. And I was still very narrow focused. I was like, Coach, I'm playing right now. You know, I'm not even, and he's like, okay, I understand. He said, I understand that. And he's like, well, you know what? Just keep everything you receive from your wherever you go. You know, I didn't know at the time I was going to play for 4 different professional teams, and the toolage I got from amazing coaches. Okay. And then I had a source of information, which I was able, you know, to kind of make my own, take the best practices of many, culminate it into one and kind of have that practice. And then have it match your values. I think your values are always ever changing, and that's how you show up every day, you know. And okay, here comes that competitive edge, okay, and making sure you have goals and that focus. Okay, who am I competing against? How am I going to get better today? So these are all things, you know, kind of going around in circles inside of me, and kind of what drives and motivates me to continue to reach out and touch different guys, because I was touched in such a special way going through my journey.
And you know, just listening to what you share, you know, one thing that pops up is this idea of confidence. And it's interesting because when I was speaking at the Football Ontario Clinic, I decided I wanted to talk about that idea of like calm and confidence. Like that is really a key to helping athletes thrive, not only on the football field, but in the game of life.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, is there anything that you consciously do with the athletes to really help them build that their confidence up?
Well, I talked to him about, you have to actually challenge yourself and get yourself comfortable with discomfort, and to take on new things. You have to grow, if, and that's how you're going to grow as a player and in life, because again, we can't control the environment and the stuff that we're going to be faced in life, but what we can control again is our approach to it, our mindset, and staying positive. Mike, some of my players look at me like, come on, coach, it's raining out here, we're not going to really, I'm like, we're going to get working. Like, our head coach, right, Coach Shahan, he really believes, hey, if it's raining, we get another opportunity to prepare for a game that may be down the road where it's going to be raining. So instead of saying, oh, this is going to be a sloppy, let's change our mindset and look at it in that way. But with respect to developing players' confidence, I have to try to get them to be comfortable with uncomfort and taking on and different new perspectives that they may not be prepared to see yet. Like when my coach said, do you want to be a coach someday? I wasn't prepared to even consider it at the time. Because I was like, this is what I'm doing right now. And he realized that. He knew I wasn't ready to start to have it out with him and kind of make a plan right there. But he also just gave me tools to say, okay, when you are prepared to do it, hey, maybe you'll have a bag of information to get started.
One thing that I love that you shared there was, giving that analogy of, it's raining at practice. And it's really interesting because I think even simple things like that, finding the opportunity to get better in that. And why I believe it's so important is we are so programmed and conditioned to allow things outside of us to control us, right? Whether it's the weather, whether it's people's opinions of us, whether it's, the mark we get on a test, that allows, that controls how we feel about ourselves, our confidence. Mm-hmm. But I love that when you challenge yourself to find the opportunity to be that glass half full, like you talked about, hey, this is going to serve a greater purpose down the road. That helps just strengthen that I'm stronger than my willingness to stay the same, right? Like my willingness to win today is stronger than my willingness to stay the same.
Oh, 100%, JT. And you know what? It's tough. I tell the guys, like, most people, and we give them immediate feedback. We film our practices, we film our drills, and we get into a meeting room and players have to sit down there and hear critical remarks, potentially coaching points on their performance. So they get immediate feedback, which I think is unique to a lot. Like if you're not involved in sports at a high level, you may not have that. You may not have an opportunity to get immediate feedback, in anything other than maybe academics, when you get a grade back, right, after you turn in your assignments. So they got to learn how to have thick skin at times.
Yeah.
Okay. Take the critical analysis. Okay. And then in turn, put out, change your actions now and take that teaching and then get better, improve. So that's the key. And then once you learn to do that in life now and take feedback, maybe from your employer or, in a relationship, and then you can use that information and improve. So that's where I say, well, we're preparing leaders, but we're just preparing guys to be fathers, and guys to be outstanding members of their community, because we're teaching them how to take critical analysis and improve.
And I just thought back to what you talked about, that ability to take feedback. And it's something you shared a few minutes ago, was the importance of surrounding yourself with great coaches and mentors that has specialized knowledge like you, right? So when you get feedback from someone like you that has performed at that high level, that has achieved the results, then like you said, you have to be able to take that feedback. You got to have some tough skin. It's not going to feel very good, but understand that a great coach or mentor is pushing you to get better.
Yes. And and again, you have to have knowledge if you're going to look to try to teach young men. Okay. And again, I'm confident enough in myself to say, I don't have the answer to that question, but guess what? I can go find it, and I will, and then I'll come back to you and I'll get you that so you can continue on your deal. But I think it all comes together just like that, JT. You got to have confidence in yourself. You have to have that burning fire, know where you're going. But as you go through that journey, find your passion, and nothing's going to get in the way. Absolutely nothing.
Love that. So a few minutes ago, we're something that came up, and I was thinking about the confidence piece.
Mm-hmm.
The Olympics, depending on when people are watching or listening to this, has brought up a lot of interesting conversation around the, young people, especially around high-level athletes and mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, as someone who, coach, you are a player's coach. And I say that in a loving way, in the fact of, I saw when people found out we were chatting, the feedback I was getting where people were so enthused to hear you. And it obviously speaks volumes about the relationships you've built. I'm curious, how important is it in today's age, working with athletes, whether it's at the university, whether it's at the pro, whether it's at high school, community, whatever level it is, that we really become aware of helping them strengthen their sort of mental fitness, emotional fitness, whatever, mental health, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, I think it's tremendously important. There's been a game changer, and that's social media. Social media now has allowed for anyone really to have instant access to pretty much total information. Okay. And I always say that is awesome. You know what? You can get anything you need right now, touch of a button, but it's a lot of information, and it's hard for the youngsters to kind of quantify that information. And that's where I think, good coaches can come in. They can help them understand that information. I do believe it's more difficult now to kind of raise your children because of these factors, and the influences out there, and it's just the immediate information, and now you can put information out the other way as well instead of just receiving it. So you got to be careful now of putting out social media content that may not align with, whether it's a program or organization you're with. So these are new considerations that I think our young people are learning how to deal with, and it's going to help them in the future and such. But it is challenging for them to kind of maneuver through,
And I love that you bring up that point, right? It's just, every generation has their own unique challenges, right? And I think we sometimes forget that. But I remember that idea really highlighted when I was coaching in track and field at OFSA. And I remember looking at some of our, top athletes. And it was interesting just how quick that feedback from social media was, that the results went out and people are already giving their 2 cents on it. And it can really, if you're not objective, it can really chip away at your confidence.
Yeah, it can. I mean, it's interactive, it's day to day. So it's tough, especially when you haven't kind of matured in a lot of the ways you need, and kind of developing that positive mindset where nothing's going to kind of stick to you. So it is a challenge for young people. I think everyone, well, a lot of people are aware and attacking it that way. It's interesting though. I think, my kids, they have these devices and access. So I'm always want to see if I can provide context for them, and that's what we'll try to do here as athletes. And yeah, the guys on our team, they can go and Google off drills, but are they getting the finer points to the drill? Are they getting the reasons why we're doing these certain drills and what it's going to allow them to do on the field? So providing context is, I believe, our jobs as instructors, if we're gonna to coach these young men to be able to apply this information that's already out there. Let's bring it in so it's nice and easy to digest, and again, efficient way for them to learn and go and perform.
I love that. I love the importance of context. So, Coach, I have one last question. So depending on when people are watching this and listening to this, we are, as we talked about earlier, coming out of an interesting time in human history. The last year and a half has really, again, just been really interesting and brought up a lot of different things. So I'm curious, what is one insight, one piece of advice that you would give? Maybe someone is just experiencing challenge, adversity, obstacles. And as we said, it's not that we want to come to expect them, but it's just understanding that they are part of life, the game of life. What is one piece of advice, one insight you could give them so that they could get back on their feet, that they can start creating some positive momentum and get back on their journey to greatness?
Really good question. Again, I think, you got to build your ability to handle these things. Adversity is going to come. And again, I truly, if you can change your focus to all the things that may or may not happen to you, to, what is going to be your response to it? Okay. And that's, I think as I've gone, I've learned how to become a better decision maker and make good decisions, and continue to learn from your own decisions and others. But again, it's change your focus from what you're going through to what's next. Like, where am I going from here? If you can change your focus and pull yourself out of that, I think there's nothing that could come up that can stop you. Yes, negative things happen. I had to mess with the clearinghouse, for example, in my journey, received a scholarship, set out for university, and then find out that I'm an international student, and one of my previous grades, when I wasn't really focused, came back to kind of haunt me, and then I had to work myself through it. Okay. Am I going to let that hurdle, if I let that hurdle take me down, I would not be here today. So those are the things where, I have a good friend, her name is Orlando Bowen. He goes into schools and he's created this leadership program where he tries to get this message to young students, the message that we give our guys here at the university level, that team, okay, and he wants to bring that feeling and that energy and that mindset to young adults that aren't playing football or aren't in a chess club or in team things. He tries to bring that to them in this and he calls it one voice, one team. That's what people need to do in life. They need to come together, do things for the right reasons, give back to your community, have goals, keep your stuff, reward yourself, keep striving. I'm not done. I want to continue to grow. I want to continue to get better. I guess coached just the last couple of weeks with the Argos. Okay, and I'm excited for them to start their season on Saturday. I helped them out a little bit. But I come across a coach, Rich Stubler. He's in his 53rd year of coaching. Okay, he coached me in my 2nd year professionally. So it was a very interesting time for me to actually get some answers from stuff that happened years ago, where he might have been coaching me and developing me, and I didn't understand it at the time. But have been able to get that understanding in later days. But to see where he's come now and how he's evolved over that big period of time has given my mind endless possibilities how I can continue to evolve. So continue to find new mentors, reset your goals, and continue to aspire. And I mean, it's all out there for us to go get.
I love that. I just love the simplicity. And I think that answer really summarizes who you are. So thank you for sharing, Coach. So I'm curious, what is the best way people can follow you, can connect with you? Are you on socials?
I'm on a few of the social mediums. A couple of my players just added me on Instagram. I'm not a huge player on there. I'm not a huge player. I don't post a ton. Just maybe a couple family pictures and such. But right now I'm at the University of Guelph. So I know I plan to be here for the foreseeable future. I have anything to do about it. But yeah, that's where you can find me. I'm going to be in Guelph and going at it with the Gryphons, hopefully for a successful 2021 campaign.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you got a great staff. You got a great staff there. And I'm really enthused to see, what 2021 has in store for you and the coaches, the players in the program.
It's going to be fun. That's all I know.
Definitely. So, Coach, I really just want to take a moment. I want to take a moment just to acknowledge you. I want to acknowledge you for the man you are, the husband you are, the father you are, the coach and the mentor, but most importantly, the great human being you are. The one thing I've really come to appreciate about you is just how optimistic you are. About just how your passion to get better and become the best version of yourself is just so inherent and embodied into who you are. And just the fact of you're taking these lessons and you're choosing to coach and mentor and serve other young people with the lessons you've learned. So thank you, Coach, for reminding me about what the game of life is and how important it is to be a servant leader. So thank you for that, Coach.
Well, thank you, JT. Thank you for the opportunity, because again, this is so fulfilling for me. If I can help guys through this is a real pivotal time of their lives. And if I can help anyone, find themselves in the way that I was able to find myself during these same formative years, as some people will call it, that's what it's all about. So, and if they're not at the University of Guelph, and I could come on your show and someone else can hear this and it can inspire them to get through something, maybe a tough time, or allow them to just set some crazy goals and go get them. Wow. That does it for me right there.
Love that, Coach. So here's what I'm going to leave you with. Again, whether you're watching, whether you're listening, here is my challenge to each of you. Coach dropped so many valuable nuggets of wisdom. But as I always remind you, every time we're in the huddle, knowledge is potential power. It's the focus and inspired action that puts that fire in your belly, that will allow you to achieve those big goals that coach is talking about. So take one of these valuable nuggets of wisdom and go do the work. And you will be on the road to reaching your next level of greatness. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I will see you in the huddle next time. Have a great day, everyone.